Good afternoon. My name is Yolanda Nevels, Board Chair for Women's Foundation of Greater St. Louis. And on behalf of our Board of Directors, welcome and thank you for joining us for our second webinar, Women Entrepreneurs and Bosses Addressing Change. Addressing change amidst COVID-19 and racial unjust, both with many layers, are impacting each of us daily. But with this, we know comes an opportunity to do better, to leverage our resources, and respond in kind to women and families, not just those that we deem to be in need, but to all of us. How are we leading? How are we leading at the Women's Foundation? It's through our mission of Women's Foundation of Greater St. Louis. We are a catalyst for workplace, individual, and policy change that advances women's economic success. And I believe that with the speakers that you will hear today, you will hear wisdom, knowledge, and how we're addressing that every day. There are changes that are happening, and the Women's Foundation is here to be a support and a voice. And we've asked women to join us as we are talking about how do we lead with COVID-19 and with the racial unjust. With this, I would like to introduce our board member, Emily Cantwell, who is our moderator and will walk us through the events for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yolanda. And I'd like to again welcome everybody to the second of our three-part series focusing on the impact that COVID-19 has had on women in the region. As Yolanda said, my name is Emily Cantwell. I'm a partner with Lathrop GPM. I focus on business litigation and employment in my practice. So as it has been for you all, it's been a busy time in those practice areas. With that, I would like to introduce our three panelists for today. I will ask them to give a quick bio of both themselves and their businesses so that we all can appreciate where they're coming from and the fantastic knowledge and insight that they are going to offer today. First up, Ronke Folletti.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ronke Folletti, and I'm so excited to be here today. I'm the founder of a handbag brand called Corriday. We make genuine leather bags that are both beautiful and functional. We make it for all those who are womanin. Womanin is our term of endearment. So I got the entrepreneurial bug because I was surrounded by so many immigrants like me who were hustling to achieve the American dream. I have honed my business skills in my time, both at JP Morgan Chase and at Wells Fargo Advisors in corporate America, really focused around corporate strategy to drive business results and client engagement, client communications, client retention, client acquisition strategies. So I'm excited to have those skills to bring to my business. So you see, Corriday means bring goodness. While selling bags makes us money, our mission is really to celebrate the heroine amongst us, holding it down, building our communities today, and raising the next generation of leaders. We want to come alongside all those who are women to bring goodness to the places and people they touch. I'm a transplant to St. Louis. I have 4 children, ages 8, 5, 3, and 6 months old. My husband is the Democratic nominee for Secretary of State for Missouri. Needless to say, our house is probably very loud and it is very busy. Life is full, but you know, I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm excited to be here and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Next up, Vita Jeffrey.
Good afternoon. I too am very excited to be part of this wonderful cast of women. And I was sitting here I can't talk today, taking notes because I just learned womanin. And so I think the excitement has me tied up. I'm like, wait, I gotta write this all down so I can start womanin and look into this. So thank you for sharing that. I am excited to be here. I am a 20-year veteran in the financial service industry. I used to tell people my desire in life, my purpose in life was to try to convince people not to die broke. But I have had a wonderful opportunity to do an array of things. I am the founder of the Heartland St. Louis Black Chamber of Commerce, and I currently serve as the president, executive director of the entity. But I have been fortunate to spend time at the state level. I worked under then Governor Nixon following Ferguson, which is where I actually developed the Heartland St. Louis Black Chamber of Commerce. And I've served recently as a Senior Vice President of Economic Development for Midwest Bank Center. And now I am fully serving the chamber. And so hopefully I am looking forward to just having a great discussion today about all things that are passionate to me, being women and issues that are particularly focused around us, and definitely what it means to be a business owner and how it affects our economy. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Vita. And third, Sherry Suma.
Good morning, and thank you so much for the introduction, Emily, and to the Women's Foundation for inviting me to be on this panel with these other very successful female bosses. My work involves protecting the public from the leading cause of lung cancer in residents and people and our citizens, and that's radon gas. So for those of you that don't know, radon is a colorless, odorless gas. You can't see it, taste it, or smell it, but it can be present at dangerous levels in your home. It's naturally occurring. It comes from the breakdown of uranium in rocks and soils. And the only way to know is to test. So I'm very passionate. A lot of people, maybe people listening to this call, may not be familiar with radon, what radon is. So I'm very passionate about educating the public, educating St. Louisans and public administrators about what those dangers are and how to protect yourself. At St. Louis Radon, of course, we do the testing and we also install mitigation systems, which is the solution if you have elevated levels of radon in your house. We've been in business for about 12 years. We do work in both Missouri and in Illinois. My background is I'm a professional engineer by trade. I've kind of done the gamut as far as it goes in civil engineering and construction. I started out doing residential land development and design, and I've also worked as a project manager for heavy highway construction projects. But I really wanted to do something that would serve the community. And that led me to this company and doing radon mitigation and testing.
Thank you. As we shift into our questions for our panelists, I did want to let everybody who's part of this webinar know that if you have questions as you go along, I would ask that you put them in the chat function at the bottom. I think by now we're all familiar with the Zoom chat function, but it is right there at the bottom of your screen. If we have time at the end of the hour, we will open up those questions to the panelists. If we do not, we will do our best to get those questions answered on the Women's Foundation social media platform. So that is something, if you want to be interactive, that is a way to be interactive throughout the our webinar. And again, we will try to get to those within the hour. And if not, check out our social media platforms afterwards. Also, if any of the participants today know of friends, family members, colleagues, etc., who had wanted to listen in on the webinar, but maybe something came up, they were double booked, etc., please know that we are recording this session today, just as we did with the first session, and that will be available on our social media platforms. It took us, I believe, a couple of days last time to get it up and going, but it will be available for viewing in a couple of days. So that's a way that you can share it for those that aren't able to be with us live today. Okay, first question. I'm going to ask Vita. Your organization represents many businesses. How have the recent impacts, and we know that there have been recent events, and we know that there have been many, impacted those industries and the businesses in our communities?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So we represent small, medium, and large businesses, but I do so locally and nationally. And so we've been able to just kind of take a look cross-sector as to what's going on. And there have been opportunities, but there also have been some casualties coming out of this. The opportunities, new businesses have been developed, new partnerships and collaborations have been developed, people have been reinventing themselves. So that piece has gone well. There have even been a number of business owners that have become experts in various fields just by utilizing this time to kind of tool up, which is wonderful. The flip side of that are the casualties that come across. Unfortunately, many businesses, if you look at what sectors small businesses typically come across, and Cherie has a wonderful business. I actually was there when you won an award from the St. Louis Women's Business Journal, and we met back then. But most often, small businesses are not in position to where they offer supplies. Most small businesses are in food, they're in various service industries. And if you've not been designated essential, or if your business is one that has to close because of social distancing rules, then those 3 months have been horrendous. Being able to figure out, how do I still offer the things that I can offer, but yet keep this distancing or stay shut down, has caused people to actually lose business. And unfortunately, Forbes did a study. And the study expected that over COVID-19, the span that they were originally looking at the COVID-19, the expectation was that we would lose between 35 and 45% of Black businesses nationwide. The April study alone showed that we had already lost 41%. And so it's now becoming, a recovery effort of, we're trying to keep some still standing, but how do we help these businesses that have already been lost recover? And those are some of the serious things. Businesses are also undercapitalized and underrepresented in times when the decisions are being made, who to give RFPs or decisions to. And so we're really just working on those fronts, trying to figure out how we can best galvanize services to help people stay solvent during this time.
Thank you. My next question, I'm going to pose it both to Cherie and Ronke. Cherie, I'll ask that you answer first. As business owners, what changes did you make for your business once the stay-at-home order went into effect? Further, what modifications did you make once business as we knew it changed? And have those changes persisted in the past months, or have the changes that you initially made morphed or changed again as now we've come into the 4th, 5th, and looking at the 6th month of this COVID-19 crisis?
Sure, thank you, Emily. And as Vita said, we have an advantage to some businesses because we were always considered essential since we were a construction company. And also real estate was always considered essential. And a lot of the business we get is from real estate transactions. So we had to very quickly navigate the city orders and the county orders, and on a dime figure out what to do differently to stay in business and to give our customers a comfort level. So not only are we a construction company, but we work in people's homes primarily, except for the commercial work that we do. So we immediately set new systems in place, and we have crews of 2 people, a lead and a laborer. And so those crews immediately started meeting at the job instead of at the shop, loading the van together and riding together. We also staggered our work crews so that they came in the morning at different times. And then of course we cleaned and sanitized anything they might have contacted in between those times. Of course, as far as going into people's homes, we try to do that as safely as possible. We try to work in homes that were vacant, or some homeowners just opted to not be at home. A lot of times we can use a back door, a basement door to get into their house. Of course, we're using all the PPE that you could think of. So we're wiping down surfaces that we touch. We are wearing booties, gloves, of course, using hand sanitizer. And we actually have not had one complaint from a customer. So it's been a fairly easy transition. Of course, along with all of that comes additional costs that we have incurred, and supplies and materials have also increased in price. That plastic that you see hanging everywhere now, we use that plastic. We use that plastic to cover sump lids in everybody's home, so we can't get it now. So we're using a thicker plastic, which is literally twice the cost, but at least we are able to still do our job. In addition, we typically try to bid as many jobs over the phone as we can. And that's different from how some other radon companies do it. But we have the advantage of being the largest company in St. Louis, in Missouri, actually, that does this. So we've installed 12,000 mitigation systems. So we have a lot of knowledge. We understand how houses are constructed. We understand the differences between new construction and old construction, and based on the street a home might be on or what we know might be under a home, that we can do a lot of bidding over the phone so we can eliminate going into the house on that end. As I said earlier, we do radon testing. So that requires a certified radon technician to be in somebody's home. So now we're asking that the homeowner maybe set the testing device when the testing is done on the porch, so we minimize that contact. We also started promoting our do-it-yourself radon test kits a lot more. Luckily, I put that in place on our website so you could purchase test kits at the beginning of March. It was a fluke. So we started promoting that a lot more. And as you can imagine, with everybody working from home, their kids being at home, people playing video games for hours in the basement, the air quality in our home is important now more than ever. And homeowners are more focused on it. So we've really done well with that part of the business. And now more people have the peace of mind that their house has been tested and they know the radon levels are low, or they know what to deal with and they need to get a mitigation system. Also, you know, with COVID and other viruses, it's more on everybody's mind that it affects your lungs. And like I said, radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer, and radon compromises your lungs. So everybody has a heightened awareness of we really need to be protecting our lung health. And so just the last part of that question, these changes have persisted throughout this entire time. And the orders for construction companies have not changed at all. So I don't see this going away for quite a while. And some of it we will always keep in place and was in place.
Thank you. Ronke, what about you? Your business is very different than what Sherry just spoke of. So I'm interested to hear your take. What changes have you made? Have they stayed in place? Have your changes changed in the past 3 to 4 months?
I feel like the constant state of flux is reality. Right. You know, a lot of what Vita said is so true and applicable. You know, initially we met the challenge with a lot of uncertainty. When people ask me, how are things going? How are sales going? I say sales aren't, to be honest. At the time when the COVID-19 hit, we're not an essential business. And most of our business, quite frankly, is earned in person. And so we do a lot of pop-up events, and that's when we get to connect with people. Now, what have we decided to do? We use the time to build for our future. You know, we looked at data to identify the persona of our clients, something we've always wanted to do. We wanted to know their story, and we wanted to know what can we do to help them achieve their goals. Like, how can Corriday, and we're everywhere online at Shop Corriday, how can Corriday be the Yoda, so to speak, to help our heroine clients achieve their goals? So this has led us to create a new content arm. So we're still working on it, and we hope to launch it next month. Back to that word, woman in. Vita is going to be woman in place, and really thinking about in place being our place, right? The word is complex, kind of like our women. We're multifaceted. And if you think about in place, you could either be in place or you're out of place, or where's your place? Place is it's this abstract and yet concrete word. And so we are really leaning into that and having conversations, podcasts, blog writings. So we've spent some time focusing on that. You know, I know we might get to this a little later, but other changes that we are looking at really relates to the racial unrest in the country. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But what we have seen is a bump in sales due to an increased awareness and an increased awareness to support Black-owned businesses. You know, Vita mentioned that 40% plus has already been lost in this past 4 months. And so it's been good to see it's been good to see a bump. And I think people are starting to become more accustomed to the reality of living in a social distanced world. We think consumer spending is increasing, and we believe that's going to lead to increases in sales as well. As far as other changes we had to make, so we have office space downtown St. Louis at the beautiful St. Louis Fashion Fund. And along with other designers, that's where we office out of. It's a beautiful space to come for shopping, but we are now working from home and we're working remote. And that is going to continue for the foreseeable future. And I also think when you're working from home, especially as a small business, it's really important to watch not just the dollars, but the pennies. And so looking at office expense is something that we're going to continue to balance and see how well can we thrive in a remote space before we decide to commit again to an in-person office. So that's just a little bit about the changes we've made and what we think is going to persist for the next few months.
Thank you. I think we'll all be interested to see the new content too that you spoke of.
I can't wait.
Yeah, that'll be great. Sherry, we know that there's been a number of federal funding programs that have come out since the COVID-19 crisis started. One of the programs included the EIDL grant, and that's been something that many businesses have used or applied for since the start of the crisis. Would you be willing to talk about how you've utilized your EIDL grant and what that grant meant to your business?
Of course. Yes, Emily, we did apply for the EIDL grant. And we also applied for the EIDL loan. So as a lot of people that might be listening know, there was an EIDL grant that you could get up to $10,000. But then there was a loan portion of it. And we received the grant fairly early on, which really helped us in what so far has been our hardest hit month, which was April. And then we just recently, last week, received the EIDL loan, which we decided to apply for. It's a 30-year loan at a 3.75% interest rate. And although we may not need it now, it's very hard, as a lot of you probably know, to get a small business loan. In fact, when I purchased this business, I wasn't able to get a small business loan. So this is a great opportunity. Of course, if you end up not needing it or not needing all of it or not utilizing it, you can always pay it back. But we're going to use that. It's a very low interest rate. So we're going to use that to help with our cash flow. And it should help tremendously because since it's over 30 years, the payment is relatively low every month. And then we can use our profits that we have now to pay down our existing loan that over time is going to be a higher interest rate.
Thank you. Vida, another program we all have become acutely aware of is the PPP loan program. I'd like to hear your take on this and how the PPP program, what the effect of that program was on minority-owned businesses. You mentioned earlier that we've seen a 41% loss. So I would be interested to hear your thought on how those two can be reconciled, if at all. And also, if you wouldn't mind touching on minority-owned businesses and focusing too on women-owned businesses in your response.
So absolutely. The Payroll Protection Program went through several iterations. I think when it was released, there was one expectation, and by the time it started rolling out and several different releasings of it, there were some things that have changed. But if we look at the program was designed to offer small businesses monies so that they could retain staff, any staff that they had. As of February 15th, the goal was to be able to pay those staff salaries at least through June 30th originally, and in the hopes that it would prevent businesses from having to lay off. But if we look at how minority businesses are typically capitalized, we start off with poorer financial health. We're not very profitable. Credit scores are typically not as high as other markets. And what affects most and what affected most with the Payroll Protection Program is the fact that typically minority businesses don't have as strong of banking relationships as are necessary in emergency instances like this. We don't have as much liquid assets that we could hedge something up against. And so all of those things culminating together made the payroll protection program very difficult when it was set out to be something that was going to be very helpful. I talked to one of my counterparts at Regions Bank, and he mentioned that they had serviced in the first couple of weeks somewhere like 50,000 loans immediately. And what that does to banks is puts them in a tailspin of trying to handle that much work differently from the work that they've typically been doing. What happened where the minority businesses were concerned, Black businesses in particular, is by not having those banking relationships, they didn't have anybody that they could call and say, I submitted my application, I haven't heard anything, do you know what's going on? And with most banks, those applications, because the banks had so many applications they were doing with, were just put to the side. So that puts businesses in position to be more susceptible to bankruptcy, more susceptible to actually going out of business, because now they're trying to maintain paying employees, but they don't have the added benefit of the payroll protection program. And it just, in a lot of cases, added to loss of income for the businesses, which means laying off of workers. We've been trying to put programs in place because technical support and back office support is oftentimes what small businesses lack and don't have enough funding for. Typically small businesses have to borrow from family. They borrow from their 401k plans, which eliminates emergency funds. They use up all their savings. And so now, a time like COVID-19, it leaves us stricken trying to figure out now how to build up the financial health of the business. And so we've put together programs where we can surround businesses with supporting cast of experts so that they don't have to worry about what they've been lacking. They can just focus on growing their businesses so that we can help them stand back up. But it really has been something I think that was intentionally set out to help us maintain business. It's been a pain point for some that still have not been able to access the payroll protection program. Women-owned businesses, women own more businesses absolutely throughout the country. We employ more employees across the store, but if we are not getting before those women-owned businesses as well, then the effect on our economy is that much more difficult. I have a woman business owner. She has 5 businesses under her name, and one of her businesses alone, she employs more than 150 employees. If we don't keep her in business, that's 150 people that are paying their mortgage, their car note, paying into our school district taxes, all of those things. And so it's incumbent upon us to make sure that across the sectors, we wrap our arms around these business owners and make certain that the health of the business financially is sustainable so that it doesn't affect our economy negatively. So.
Thank you. The next question, I'm going to start with Ronke. What changes have you made in how you approach your clients with your business? Have these changes caused a shift in your original business model? I think you're on mute.
I was brilliant on mute. Like I alluded to earlier, most of our businesses is really one in person. And so it thrives with in-person events, and that's been a shift for sure. So we are leaning into going direct to client instead, or maybe more so going to direct to client, and also looking at virtual pop-up and virtual events. You know, one of the things that we are leveraging to help us grow as a small business is really leaning into marketing automation. So it's part of the things that, you know, you didn't have time to do, but because we have a little more time now, we're focusing on actually doing different reviews between Salesforce or Benchmark One, different marketing automation tools that some moderate or bigger size businesses will leverage to really drive the sales and drive the content and drive the user engagement. And so that's been good. Something else that's been really good is really just connecting one-on-one with clients. It's been great. As a founder that is known in the community or that is known by some of our clients, that they reach out and say, hey, what's going on? How can I help? How are things? That's been really, really good to experience. So I think into the future, D2C, I think it's going to be the name of the game. We are going to look at wholesale partners and boutiques because they're small businesses too. And so we have some strategic markets that we've identified that have professional women, that have a persona, that are catering to these multidimensional women. And so looking at those boutiques in those areas and developing relationships with the owners and with the small business owners there to see how we can partner, how we can support, what changes can we make, and how can they help bring the Cori Day story to their clients as well.
And Sherry, what about you? I know you touched on this previously with some of the changes that you made at the beginning of March, maybe not knowing how impactful those would be, but what has changed in your business with how you're approaching your customers and shifting your business model to adapt to our new normal?
So not only do I consider our customers, the customers that we go into their house and install systems and do testing, but I also consider our customers as our referral partners. And we do a lot of business with realtors. And normally, like Run K, we're in front of our customers face to face every week. I'm in real estate offices, I'm presenting, I'm doing lunch and learns. And so all that went by the wayside. But I did continue to reach out to offices, and it turned out that a lot of them were meeting even more often, but on a Zoom format. So I was allowed to tap into that and still present and actually do some lunch and learns. And in some regards, it was more of an advantage because a lot of the realtors were slower. So they were more likely to be on the call and be present and have time for the education. So that was a huge advantage. I also did a Zoom call at Anders CPA. They do a health and wellness lunch and learn every month. They have for a couple years or so. So again, I was able to keep my appointment. It was just over Zoom, but I think about 125 people participated. And had it been live in their office, I doubt that many people would have been available. In fact, I don't know, maybe 50 would have been available. But since so many people were working from home, it was a great event. Shortly after COVID and the work from home orders came about, I immediately thought, okay, I need to keep in contact with my SOI. And the way that I did that initially was I bottled hand sanitizer and labeled it with our St. Louis Radon logo. And I put them in care packages for realtors. And I literally hand delivered to 100 houses and hung them on our realtors' doors. And that actually ended up snowballing into us private labeling individual hand sanitizers, 1, 2, and 4 ounces for our realtors and for other small business owners so that they could protect their own clients. And as everybody knows, that's hard to get, not as much now as it was, but our turnaround time is about 2 weeks on that because I have everything here in order to do that. It also kept our employees busy when maybe they wouldn't have been busy. Most of our employees are paid by the hour. So it was an advantage there. And it also was another reason to reach out and stay in front of our sphere of influence. So it was just a way to add value in a different respect from how we normally do it. And that's, of course, installing radon mitigation systems.
Almost like adding intangible value, it seems like.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep. Bea, the next question's for you, and it's a little bit of a change from what we've been talking about, but incredibly important nonetheless. We've seen a lot of changes in our community in the past few months, both as a result of COVID-19 and the current racial and social unrest. A lot of employers and employees have talked about increased anxiety or concern among their workforce. What sort of health and wellness plans have you seen employed by employers to assist their employees with these issues?
So, yeah, it's actually a very good question. We've got to look at the fact that, and keep in mind, I represent a Black chamber, and so my focus is on small Black businesses, but I also sit on a couple of councils and work groups for St. Louis County at the resurgence of how we're going to help resurge minority and immigrant businesses. And I'm finding that there are some things that go across those sectors or cultures the same. And what we're looking at is we've got to be able to drive focused opportunities. Right now, we have a very powerful opportunity to take some things that have been taboo in our community and make them more something that we're working for together in a more united front. In that, we're having to walk alongside these businesses. COVID-19 has brought something that none of us were prepared for. We quite frankly still are trying to gather our thoughts on how to best be prepared. So in that, we're working with a lot of groups that are providing PPE and also helping to develop best practice plans for businesses. But we've also got to make certain that as we develop these plans, in one case, there's an opportunity to figure out if we need to start certifying individuals to go in and check for COVID preparedness, so to speak. Does the business have a good cleaning regimen that's going to fit up to standard to allow them to have people come in? And all of these things that are being considered could come at an extra cost to the business owner. And so we're walking alongside trying to help them be prepared for how to open up to a normal size of clientele that they've been used to functioning with. But we're also assisting the businesses in identifying resources for assistance. For example, Ameren UE has a program right now that they're offering small businesses that they can sign up for, and that would give them, I think the program put aside like $500,000 to help with the Ameren bill for small businesses. They can just go to the website, Ameren's website, and apply for it online. It's easy peasy. But identifying resources like that so the business owner isn't feeling like it's just me. You know, I'm already trying to figure out how to stay in business, but I've also got to figure out all these extra costs as well. Another thing that we're looking at is the mental health of the business owner. If we look at it, and I want to go back from across the board to looking narrowly right now at the Black businesses that are members of our chamber. Most often, the households that are being most affected are households where a lot of people are considered essential workers. In the Black community, you have that a lot, which means that health issues are more readily focusing and harming those families. So we've got a couple of things. If you have someone that lost their job because of COVID-19, if you have someone that's having to go to work every day, which means that they're more exposed, and you have someone in that household that lost a business, that's calling for a lot of pain points, anxiety, and concerns. And so what we are adding is a partnership with counselors, therapists, and support groups that can kind of walk alongside the mental health aspect of the business owner as well. So that once again, we're shooting with the goal of making sure that these businesses who, for lack of a better expression, are being targeted just by those factors that I mentioned, not that anybody's targeting them, but just how they exist. We're trying to be more targeted in how we're assessing the help that they need and walk alongside. And then lastly, we formed several groups to look at what barriers to success exist. And we're doing everything that we can to help remove those barriers for the individuals that we're working with, and in the hopes that that's helping. So.
Okay, so a follow-up to that then, what impact are you seeing? And Ronke, I'd like to know your thoughts on this as well. What impact have this current social injustice movements had on minority-owned businesses and the women-owned businesses in our community?
You know what? So that's good too. The social and the pursuit of justice has had just as much effect as COVID-19. When the protesters, the protest levels were at their highest because they were in pursuit of just trying to level out equity for us across the board. It meant that some businesses, even when city and county released these open back up to society or open the standards back up, it meant that some of those businesses had to stay longer, close longer while we work through those efforts. And so I think sometimes we fail to look at all of the effects that what's happening in our society and in our communities is having, and how it has some long-standing effects. We have a restaurant that is in U City that we've been working with. This is a gentleman that had to let go a lot of his staff. He had just opened back up, then he had to close back down. And it's just finding ways to work around those kinds of things when you have businesses that are in targeted areas. And it's interesting because a lot of the business owners absolutely understand the purpose of the fight for justice that's going on. And so it's just trying to find new ways of operating while we're in this new position. And so some of the municipalities that are more heavily targeted are the ones where we're seeing the businesses are struggling and trying to find ways to work around. You know, Florissant is having a difficult time right now. And so how do we make certain to wrap our arms around those businesses so that those two efforts can exist simultaneously? And it takes a lot of support. The one thing that we are doing is trying to drive focus opportunities. And I said earlier, we have a powerful opportunity, especially in our city right now. I sit on a lot of councils nationwide, and Ferguson still is a power word nationwide. And so people still have all eyes on St. Louis to see how we work through these things. And then looking at that, one of the things that we have to do is make certain that as a community, it's okay for us to say that we're going to target our effort, for example, on Black businesses, and that not be felt like we're saying, but nobody else matters. So what we're doing is trying to understand that all of our communities will be better and need these particular businesses to exist. And I'll say this in closing. We talk about how most often people will say, well, don't say that word, or don't focus on that because that doesn't feel good. But when people land in St. Louis specifically, they land at Lambert Airport. And in order for them to get to the MLS stadium, in order for them to go see our wonderfully cherished Cardinals, in order for them to get to our beautiful new wheel, to our aquarium, they've got to drive through Berkeley, they've got to drive through Normandy, they've got to drive through Jennings. Except they go all the way out the way, go west first and go. If they head down 70, there are all these heavily populated, densely populated Black communities that if we don't continue to stand those businesses up, the economics of St. Louis will be affected in a way that we're not prepared for. And so there does have to be a targeted effort from all of us to wrap our arms around and say, we need them to exist because these people, most businesses hire people that look like them. And so Black business owners are going to hire their family, their friends, the people that they know differently than other businesses. We need them to exist so that those individuals can still pay their mortgage, car notes, and all of those things. And it can't be something that's a taboo for us to talk about. And we have a great opportunity to face that together collaboratively, address, and then be willing to support. So that's what we're looking at right now.
Thank you. That's an incredible response. Ronke, you spoke about what you've done earlier, but speak more to that. What the movements, what have they done for your business?
So I think I want to go personal and then I'll go more professional. So from a personal perspective, you know, it's been a lot. It's been a lot. So I think if we go back to March at the beginning of this, so my children came out of, they didn't go back. They haven't gone back since spring break, right? And so if you think about the compounding effect of, there is the stress that we feel from, you know, what's going on just before even the racial unrest, what's going on with the coronavirus and wearing masks and, all the misinformation that's out there, and trying to juggle and, be fully present at work, be fully present at home. The juggle is real. You're not fully present anywhere. You either work super early or super late. My team gets emails from me at 2:00 in the morning. It's unhealthy, but that's when they do. I try to schedule my emails for the morning though. So people don't judge me. But the reality is that there's that stress, right? And so the stress is acute, it's compounded, but everybody's feeling it. So we're in this together. And then there's the racial unrest. And as a person of color, as a mother of a Black son, as a wife of a Black man, I had to take a pause. I think taking the moment to grieve, taking the moment to reflect, taking the moment to even pause, and taking the moment to have conversations. So I'm not sure if you're asking me like, how have we done this from a team perspective? So going more professionally, it's really around having these frank conversations, and also having a conversation to not have the conversation. That's something that I learned. So I was in I'm a talker. I got to talk out my emotions, got to get it out. Like, let's talk about it. And I had a Zoom call with some girlfriends to say, hey, let's talk. And one of my girlfriends was very instructive, was like, you know what? Let's not. I came here to have this space to pause. And so now when I talk to my team, or when I give them that option. We can talk about it or we cannot, but understand that, it's open and we can definitely deal with it. From a business perspective, so I reached out to a few designers, one in particular, she's a fabulous metalsmith here in St. Louis. Her name is Sheba Mohammed. She owns Manal. And so she does jewelry. And so we are talking about the guilt that you may feel, or we could be feeling, in the sense of, okay, as a minority business, what's happened it's always happened, but I think the world is woken up to the racial injustice, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and there's this awakening of let's support the Black community, let's support Black businesses. And, I'm like, hey, yo, I feel a little guilty. How do you feel? And so, just really having that genuine conversation as to, are we profiting from tragedy, right? And really come to the realization that no, we're not. We are getting an opportunity to build our community, to tell these stories, as Vida mentioned, to make sure that we get to a point where we can have long-term impact in the community by hiring people that will pay those mortgages, that will support those taxes, that pay for the Cardinals or for the zoo or for the stadium and all those things. And so as a person of color, I'm grateful to have the space. I'm grateful to have the community support and acknowledgement. Like, let's wrap our arms around this moment and around each other. And I am acutely aware that I may be carrying an undue weight, mental load, because of my position. Again, as a Black mom, as a Black woman, as a Black business owner, as a Black professional, as a Black wife, all these things, there is an acute awareness of both my privilege and my disadvantages and my mental stress. I would say that. So I hope that answers your question, but that's as authentic as I am.
That's great. No, that's fabulous. That's fabulous. For the last few minutes, we've got about 10 minutes left. I'm gonna open up some questions to the group. And the first one is gonna focus on conversations that have surrounded the additional unemployment benefits that the CARES Act allowed for, and making it harder for employers to either bring their employees back or to find employees who are willing, you know, a new hire, not necessarily a rehire or bringing them back from furlough, but a new hire, and finding the talent pool that was out there prior to the entry and the enactment of the CARES Act. Have any of you experienced that, Vita? Have your businesses voiced frustration to you over that? And what have you done to overcome that issue if you have dealt with it?
Yeah, you know, that's kind of such a double-edged sword because it's a necessary thing to be able to increase the amounts to help families and what they're going through right now. But it does mean for some of our businesses that finding workers right now is near impossible. And that's because the workers, if they weren't paying, you know, $15 per hour, if maybe they were paying $13, $14, but right now I can stay home and protect my health and protect my family, not to mention because now my kids are not in summer camp. So my being home is more cost effective than I can absolutely stay in this position. And so it's a challenge, and we've just got to be able to work through that. There are more people right now who are looking for jobs, but it really depends on what those jobs are. And as I mentioned earlier, the sectors of business that most small businesses, especially small Black businesses, are in, means that we're not looking for highly skilled, highly technical people. We're looking for targeted people in different areas. And so, right, it's not giving the resurgence we needed to give along our businesses right now today.
Sherry, what about you? Have you experienced any of this with your workforce? And if so, what have you done to work on it, for lack of a better term?
We have experienced it. So we did not lay anybody off. We did not furlough anyone. We kind of had just enough work to, at some points in time, to keep everybody busy enough. Furloughing people would have been the absolute last resort for me. As Vita mentioned, it is so hard to find employees. Before this, it was hard to find employees because the unemployment rate was so low. So we've been struggling to find employees for 4 years. And I wasn't going to do anything to get, so my employees were out in the workforce or had the opportunity to get unemployment because I knew the benefits were so high, and the people that we employ are in that price point where the unemployment benefits are, you know, the same or close to the same as what they're making. So once they go on unemployment, they're not going to want to get off of it. And also, like Vita mentioned, now some of those people might be taking care of their children or use that time in a different way. So I didn't put myself in that position. However, we are hiring and I'm not finding anyone. I'm not surprised. I'm hoping that after July 31st, when hopefully that extra $600 per week gets lifted, that the job market will be a little bit better. But yes, we are struggling, and the other small business owners that I know are struggling as well.
Okay, what about you?
You know, my business is small, much smaller, and so I don't have those same kind of challenges. We have held off on hiring only because of all the uncertainty, and so I think it's still in a watch and see place for us.
Ronke, I'd be interested in St. Louis, the St. Louis Fashion Fund. I mean, that's this incredible part of our community. What about that, your shared office space? Have you heard other small business owners that you worked with in that office space? Have they spoke to this? Have they found that it's maybe more difficult to bring in people or retain people than it was, you know, a year ago or even 6 months ago at this point?
So I've had conversations with probably half of the designers that are in there, and I think a lot of us are in similar boats. Most of our business thrives in-person events, and so if you think about it, you can be a 20-year overnight success, and so it takes time. So a lot of people are really reconsidering their business model, and at this point, nobody is investing in new staff members. Even the fund itself is paring down, And so I think we're just thinking more strategically, and how do we do more things remote? How do we make sure we're connecting with our clients still? So I think that's the focus for everyone right now.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes left, so I'm gonna ask the last question for the group, and then if we have any additional questions from the people who are listening in today, I would welcome you to put those into the chat feature now. We do have one that I'll hope we can get to before we run out of time. The last question, though, is what key piece, actually, I'm gonna ask two questions. It's gonna be a two-part question. The first, what key piece of advice would you give to women bosses out there, both in the St. Louis region and nationally? And is there any silver linings that we can take out of what we've discussed today? And Vida, I'll start with you.
Okay. I think the advice that I would give women business owners right now is just be intentional, more so than ever before. You know, this is a time where collaborative efforts is great, because Zoom brings everything and makes it so close for us. And taking advantage, think globally for our businesses, because right now we get to lift all restraints. We get to list all restraints off of the business that we're doing in the areas that we're reaching. Stay encouraged, and lastly, journal, journal, journal. All of us need to make certain that we are writing everything down that's happening right now, because we are changing more so than ever before. We're working more so than ever before, because we're working longer hours now that we can work from home. But I would absolutely say journal and write it all down.
And what about silver linings?
The silver linings that this too shall pass. You know, my mom and my aunt were my example of they were children who came behind the Depression, and I watched them. I've got my aunt, when I was growing up as a kid, my aunt had a closet where she had like cleaning fluid out of the wazoo. She would always have like 30 cans of Comet, and I never understood it. And I learned that her parents, you know, started keeping things. And so she started keeping all of these large numbers of supplies. And she lived to tell that story. We'll be able to live and tell the story of what this was like. I was talking to my 10-year-old about, they'll look up, because right now there are things that they want that's not readily available. She likes Schnucks donuts. Schnucks isn't selling their fresh donuts right now. And so she'll have to remember, while at one point in her life, she could go to Schnucks and reach in and get her donuts. And now she's like, bring me a donut back. Well, they're not selling them. And so we're absolutely living through a change in history. And so the silver lining is that it won't always be like this, but we will have this to look on and see how it stretched us, how we grew from it, how we became new creations. So
That's great. Ronke, what about you?
Yeah, so I am so glad Vida said journal, because that's what I was going to share. So a piece of advice I recently learned from another female CEO is to script in past tense. So that is, when you journal, do your journal entry, write it as if it's already happened. Don't live in I will do this. It's always daunting because it's always ahead of you. Living in I am, that is, you're a visionary and you're living in the moment. So I will give you an example of that. So a scripting is, I'm so grateful today that I was included in Oprah Winfrey's holiday gift guide. So I'm saying it out into the world, and I'm journaling in past tense. So new thing that I'm learning. So I'm just passing that on. And a silver lining, I mean, I am sitting here in awe of Sherry, in awe of Vida, and I'm just like, I really needed this women in my life. I'm thankful to Gwen and Diane for inviting me to join this panel. And I think we have a community here. And so we're not alone. And it's important to understand that and lean in. That's my biggest takeaway.
Great, thank you. Sherry?
Ronke and Vida, thank you for the journal idea. The only thing I've been writing is new policies. So now that I'm done with writing 10 new policies, I'm going to start journaling. So I appreciate that advice. I honestly wouldn't have ever thought of it myself. The advice that I can offer is stay in the game. I saw so many small business owners take this as an opportunity to almost stop working, to stop thinking about their business, to take a vacation, to take a break. And I did the opposite, and I saw that other business owners that did the opposite thrive. There's so few times in your business when you're going to get the advantage of time. And it was a wonderful thing to a degree. I can't say how many things I accomplished during that time. Did I work extra hours to do it? Yes, but you know, I got our CRM to a better place than it was. I have a webinar ready to go, a CEU class ready to go. My presentations are spot on now. I have a direct mailer. Like the list is kind of endless. But you really have to stay plugged in during these times. You have to stay in front of your SOI. You can't disappear, because if you disappear, people will think you're out of business even if you're not. And the others in your industry may surpass what you're doing. And I was on a call with some top producing agents yesterday, and they've been telling me over the past month how busy they are and that their business is up. And I know that home sales were down 30% in May. So I said, how could that possibly be? And it's true, because those are the realtors that are staying in front of people that have continued to work when other realtors stayed at home, called their clients, asked them to catch up in 3 months, asked them to put off the sale of a home. So you really just have to stay in the game.
Okay, thank you. So we are at 1:02, so we're 2 minutes over the hour. I want to thank all of the panelists again. We'll pull up the conclusion slides just so that we can keep ourselves as Women's Foundation in the game. I want to let everybody who's on the line know of some upcoming events. The first is our third webinar of this series. It's going to be on July 22nd, focusing on women returning to the workforce. And then we also have events coming up in the fall. We have an advocacy event on August 13th. We have our annual Making a Difference dinner, and it's going to be virtual this year, as many other events have gone, on September 24th. We're really excited about it. We think that it's going to be a fantastic event. The honoree is going to be Lorna Godwin, and then our panelists, Caroline Kendall Betts and Allie Kendall Hogan, two names very well known in St. Louis, and Carol Daniel is going to come back as our moderator. So we would encourage you to go to the Women's Foundation website to get more information about those events. And also, if you're interested in either donating or becoming more involved with the Women's Foundation, all that information can be found at our website. We had a couple questions that did come up during the session, specifically asking about some of the materials that Vita mentioned and some of the contact information for our panelists. We will put that up on our social media platforms so that you know how to find something fabulous that Ronke has made, how you can get the resources from Vita, or if you have questions or need some connections from Sherry, we will make those resources and contacts available to you. But for that, we'll conclude. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing everybody on July 22nd. Thank you.